Welcome to Study with Sudhir. This is your digital classroom. My name is T.S. Sudhir. We are looking at a chapter from Civics or Political Science, which is part of the Social Science syllabus for class 10 CBSE students. And we are looking at a chapter called Political Parties. We'll be doing this chapter in two parts. This chapter mainly dealing with this part dealing with why do we need political parties and what do we mean when we say political parties. Political parties, which we in Hindi know it as Rajnitik Dal. Okay, now why do we need political parties? Now, if you see, political parties essentially operate in a system called democracy, elections. But while people understand elections, people understand political parties also, they don't understand heavy duty concepts like what is democracy. If you go to a village or even to a small town, or even to a city for that matter, and ask people what exactly is democracy, they may not be able to define it for you. But the moment you say political parties and name at least 5 political parties or name some political leaders, they'll be able to do it for you. So in this chapter, we'll be talking about the different functions of political parties, the structure of political parties, the different kinds of political parties. And I can tell you, I have covered politics for close to 30 years now as a journalist. So I have seen, reported, known them at great length, right? Understand the dynamics of politics. So what I will try to tell you also will be with a lot of examples and anecdotes which will make it easy for you to understand. It won't be simple bookish NCERT knowledge that I'll be giving you. So stay tuned. As I said, we'll be doing this chapter in 2 parts and we'll be covering the entire social science syllabus, especially history and civics, political science on Study with Sudhir for CBSE class 10 students. So, as I said, political parties is something which people understand. Many aware citizens will also be knowledgeable about what is the symbol of the Congress party, what is the symbol of the Bharatiya Janata party, what is the symbol of the Samajwadi party, what is the symbol of the Aam Aadmi party, right? So, Aam Aadmi party ka symbol kya hai? Malum hai? Jhadu. Okay, right. Okay, so let's first ask, why do we need political parties at all? Which is what I have written right on top. Political parties, why? Because in a democracy, you need somebody to represent the people, get into power and frame all the policies and programs for the benefit and welfare of the people at large, right? So that is something which is understandable. But what exactly is the definition? वो 3 dates में पूछता है ना, definition क्या है? तो definition क्या है political parties का? तो पहले definition सीख लेते हैं और इसमें भी you don't have to rectify it. You don't have to do rote learning. Just understand it. It's very easy. And I will teach you history and civics basically as a story. It will just be like a storytelling session. So, political parties are essentially a group of people, a group of different people who decide to come together, right? Who come together to contest elections, okay? And hold power in the government. Now, it could also, you may say that ये तो club में भी होता है. This happens even with the club. A group of people come together, they contest the club elections and hold power in the government. Okay. Now, even in a club elections, there could be 2 panels which may call themselves as different parties. Progressive party versus Democratic party. I'm just giving an example, right? So, the definition of a political party, because here we are talking about politics, we are talking about power which will be wielded for the benefit and welfare of the people at large. So, a group of people who come together to contest elections and hold power in the government. Simple definition. It's not a very complicated kind of definition. And once they win power, once they form the government, then they implement all the policies on the basis of which they have been elected by the people. Understood? Simple. Now, parties basically are different kinds. Like the Congress party's policies and programs are very different from the policies and programs of the Bharatiya Janata party. Understood? Right? What the left parties like the CPI and the CPM do are again very different from, say, a party like the Shiv Sena. Right? Understandable. So, and in different states, you have different regional parties which kind of represent the regional aspirations of the people. In Telangana, you have Telangana Rashtra Samiti, which is in power. In Andhra Pradesh, you have the YSR Congress and the Telugu Desam. In Tamil Nadu, you have the DMK and the AIADMK, all regional parties. In Bengal, you have Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress. So all of them are regional parties which are strong only in their particular states, or it could be one or two states, right? Like for instance, a party like the Telugu Desam would think that it is strong in Andhra Pradesh as well as to an extent also in Telangana, right? Now, what all happens within a party? What are the different units in a party? You have the leaders. Let's take the example of the BJP. Who are the leaders of the BJP? You have Prime Minister Narendra Modi, you have Amit Shah, you have JP Nanda, who is now the BJP president. You will have general secretaries of the party. You will have senior leaders like a Rajnath Singh, a Nitin Gadkari, etc. in the party. So they are the leaders of the party. Then you have the members who are enrolled as members, that I take a membership of a party. Right? Now, I am a free citizen. Now, I may not want to be associated with the party straight away. So, I will not be a member. But there will be many people who will decide that I believe in the policies of this particular party. So, I will become a member. And when elections come, I will use my different forms of social media, right? On WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, or I will go to the neighborhood park and even canvass for a particular party. So that makes me an active member of the party, right? The third ones are the followers, right? Now followers are those who will not actively campaign or canvass for a candidate of that party or for the party in general, but they will be followers, which means that come election time, I will vote for a particular party. Let me just give you an example of USA, and since the American elections have just got over, I covered the American elections in 2012. I was there for 12 days traveling across the country. Fascinating learning experience, I can tell you, when Obama was re-elected in 2012 against Mitt Romney of the Republicans. In USA, what happens is there are certain states which have for years and decades together always voted for a particular party, Democrat or Republican. For instance, a state like Texas has always voted for Republicans, right? So it's always known as a party where a particular state where a particular party always wins. So the followers are those who will actually go out and vote for a particular party and say that, okay, I believe in this party's policies and principles, I will vote for this party only. Okay, so these are the three types of leaders, members and followers, which are the three units of a political party. This came as a question also in a recent examination. Now, what does a political party do? But before that, let me just talk to you briefly about partisan and bipartisanship. Okay, partisanship has been given as a glossary in your NCERT book. Now, a person who is strongly committed to a party, group or a faction, right? So, which means partisan means I'm partial. That's how the word comes. I'm partial towards the policies of this particular political party, right? And it basically says that I'm taking this side and I'm not looking at the other point of view. The opposite of that is bipartisanship, and bipartisan is a word that you will often hear if you read the newspapers. For instance, bipartisanship essentially means that the two major political parties decide to be taking a similar position on major issues concerning the country. For instance, foreign policy. Now, irrespective of who comes to power, whether it was the UPA in power between 2004 and 2014, the Congress-led UPA, or the NDA which has been in power since 2014, the foreign policy generally remains the same, right? Our relations with UK, our relations with France, our relationship with USA, with China, with Pakistan, largely speaking, the foreign policy kind of issues remains the same, which means the politics over major policy issues is bipartisan. It is not partisan. ऐसा नहीं हो कि every 5 years the policy of the government or of the country towards a particular another country, towards say Egypt, towards the Gulf countries changes. ऐसा नहीं होता. It doesn't work like that. Now let's come to the functions of the political parties. There are broadly 7 functions of a political party. The first one, of course, is to contest elections, and that what we have already learned in the definition of a political party. So they fight. In some countries like the USA, UK, there are only two parties, mainly two parties, which contest against each other. Republicans versus Democrats in the USA, Conservatives versus Labour in the UK, right? So they basically contest elections, chunav ladte hain, and whoever wins comes to power in that particular country. The second one is, of course, deciding on the policies and programs. Like, I decide that I will do this if I am elected to power in that particular state or the entire country, right? So everyone has, why is this done by a political party? Because there are lots of opinions which come in, right? For instance, the senior citizens will say that we want this to be done for us if you come to power, right? So different opinions are brought in. Then a manifesto is prepared before an election, and the political party says that this will be our policies and programs if we are elected to power and we form the government. So basically what a political party does is to kind of condense a large number of opinions to a few specific pointers, saying that we will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points if we come to power. Okay, so that is what a political party will be done, and that will be done by the ruling party which will come to power. The third, of course, is the making of laws, and that's one of the most important functions of a political party if it forms the government. अगर वे सरकार बनाते हैं, so they make the laws. कानून बनाने की जो प्रक्रिया है, that is done by the ruling party. Okay, so that is done in the legislature, in the legislative assembly in the states, or in parliament in the country, in India, and that's how the entire process of making laws is conducted. Then it runs the government, the council of ministers, the cabinet, etc. That's essentially done. So the big policy decisions, whatever they have promised during the election campaign, it gets converted into laws, and they run the government that we will do this. This is what we had promised during the election campaign. Therefore, we are bringing in the laws, and that's how we are running this particular government, for which they have the council of ministers, the ministers for shipping, the minister for railways, the minister for finance, the minister for defense, etc., etc. Okay. Then the party which loses the election forms the opposition, right? So they are in the opposition, whose job is to oppose, criticize whatever it does not like of the ruling party and the government. So if the government is doing something which the opposition thinks it is anti-people, it will criticize that particular decision of the government. So the opposition, it's like a check and balance on what the government of the day does. So that is its most important role. Okay, so वो उसकी भूमिका में जो opposition है, विपक्ष जिसको बोलते हैं हिंदी में, opposition plays that particular role. Opposition, the word coming from oppose. Okay, then they shape public opinion. The ruling party or the opposition party, the political parties, basically they represent the people of the country. So if the people of the country have a particular issue which is agitating them, they will raise those issues and they will hit the streets, they will do dharna, they will stage marches, they will call for a bandh in order to represent the feelings and the emotions of the people of the country or the state. So that's what they will doing. They launch agitations, etc. in order to represent the public mood and opinion. Okay, this is the sixth function of the political party. The last one is welfare schemes. Now, especially when they are in government, they will ensure that whatever welfare schemes are launched by the government, they reach the public of the country. If they say that we will sell rice at 3 rupees a kg, they will try to ensure that the poor of the country, the below poverty line people, get access to that rice or wheat at 3 rupees a kg. So that is what is done. These are the 7 functions. I hope it's absolutely clear, nothing very complicated about it. Now, let's come to a few things about, the main point I said. Why are political parties necessary in the first place? Now, if you see the panchayat elections, Now, panchayat elections, what happens is that they are conducted largely on a non-party basis. But even while there, which means essentially that I will stand for an election of the sarpanch of my particular village panchayat, but I will be a non-party candidate. There will be no party label with me, right? But what happens largely is that because political parties also want to control the panchayats, because panchayat is the smallest political or administrative unit in the country, right? So they would want a sarpanch of their party, but it will be on a non-party basis. So they will back that particular sarpanch, provide him for financial resources to fight the election, but he will not be officially known as a Congress party candidate or a BJP candidate. ऐसा नहीं होता, it will be fought on non-party basis, but essentially they do have political backing. So what happens is that if just imagine a situation where there are no political parties. If the country elects 540 plus MPs and say, okay, you form the government, there will be complete chaos, है ना? पूरी एक तरह से, people will not know what to do. So you are not just electing a Narendra Modi. He's maybe getting elected as the MP from Varanasi, but he also he's the leader of the Bharatiya Janata Party. So you know that if you elect a large number of BJP MPs, what kind of government you will get, which will be headed by Narendra Modi, right? You understand that, right? So what will happen is that you know exactly before you are going to the voting booth, the polling booth, and casting your vote with the EVM, you know exactly what kind of policies to expect if this particular government is formed by this particular political party. Okay, so there will be more responsibility with the manner how the country is governed. So that is why political parties are necessary, because as your book says, the government may be formed, but the unity will remain uncertain if there are just about 540 MPs being elected individually. But because the 540 MPs who are being elected belong to different political parties, you have an Asaduddin Owaisi coming from MIM from Hyderabad, you have a Pratap Simha coming from Karnataka from the BJP, you have MPs from Shiv Sena getting elected from Maharashtra, you have Akhilesh Yadav getting elected as an MP from Uttar Pradesh from Samajwadi Party, you have a Farooq Abdullah getting elected as an MP from Srinagar in Kashmir. So what I am saying is each one of them represents a political party, which is why it said elected representatives will be accountable to their respective constituency, right, for what they do in their particular constituency. But none of them, if they are not part of a political party, they will not responsible for running the country, which is why a political party system is necessary. Now, I mentioned to you about the panchayat thing, which has already been mentioned here. The rise of political parties is also linked to the emergence of representative democracies, right? Because large societies need representative democracy. Now, what do you mean by representative democracy? Because a representative, who is my representative? If I have a problem, I go to the local MLA, I go to the local MP, I go to the local corporator who is representing my area in the municipal corporation, and I expect that person to solve my problem. This relationship is what forms the basis of representative democracy, right? So this is the mechanism to help frame policies, okay, or if you are in the opposition, to oppose or criticize those policies. So political parties essentially fulfill these needs that the citizens, the voters essentially need, and therefore they are very, very important component in a democracy. So that is what is known as representative democracy. I hope it is all very clear till here. Now, let's now come to different forms of representative democracy, and by that I mean some countries have a one-party rule, some countries have a two-party system, some countries have a multi-party system, and that's what I have written out here. A one-party system is followed by a country like China, a two-party system is followed by countries like UK and USA, and a multi-party is followed by countries like India, right? Now, what is the difference between these two, right? In China, let's come to that, China first, because you have only the Communist Party of China, which is in power. So there is really no strong opposition to the Communist Party. So whatever is done by the Communist Party becomes the law. Whatever they decide, the people may not like it, people may oppose it, but because it's a one-party system, you have only one. It's like, you know, if you had only Shah Rukh Khan as an actor and no other actor was allowed in the entire Hindi film industry, you will be forced to watch movies only of Shah Rukh Khan. Okay, or if you will be forced to watch movies only of Akshay Kumar. If it was a two-party, Akshay Kumar and Shah Rukh Khan, then you will be forced to watch movies only of Akshay Kumar and Shah Rukh Khan, right? It's like that. So in China, you have something called a one-party system. The two-party system is better because you can alternate. You don't like Shah Rukh Khan, you can go to see a movie of Akshay Kumar. You don't like Akshay Kumar, you can go to watch a movie of SRK. It's like that. So the UK and the USA follow that system, as I mentioned, where they can choose between either of the two main political parties. There are some minor parties which have also come in both the countries, but essentially it is these two parties which hold sway. Okay. Now, the third one, of course, is a country like India, and that's because India is the regional diversity in a country like India is huge, right? Because the issues in, say, in Andhra Pradesh and a Tamil Nadu are very different from the issues in an Uttar Pradesh and a Bihar, which is why every state, essentially, you go to Odisha, Naveen Patnaik has been chief minister for so many years, close to 2 decades of the Biju Janata Dal. Mamata Banerjee is chief minister of Bengal of the Trinamool Congress. K. Chandrasekhar Rao is chief minister of the Telangana Rashtra Samiti, again a regional party. Jagan Mohan Reddy in Andhra Pradesh, YSR Congress. Edappadi Palaniswamy of the AIDMK, Tamil Nadu, again a regional party. So, regional parties have held sway in many states. Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, Uddhav Thackeray, again a regional party, though Shiv Sena does contest elections in few other states as well. So, even if you see the multi-party, these are like multi-party straight away, like, you know, YSR Congress, TRS is in power on its own in the states, but then it also can form alliances. For instance, in a state like Kerala, for instance, you have the LDF and you have the UDF. The UDF alliance is headed by the Congress party. The LDF is headed by the CPIM. So the policies of the LDF and the UDF are very different from each other. So and both fronts have several small parties, about half a dozen parties in each one of them. One party from LDF can move over to UDF, UDF party can move over to LDF. That also happens, right? But largely everyone knows what are the two fronts in Kerala and people vote for those fronts. So when elections are held, CPM will say, okay, out of this many seats, 100 plus seats, we will contest these many seats. CPI will contest these many seats. NCP will contest these many seats. Similarly, Congress will say Congress will contest this many seats as part of the UDF. The other smaller parties, Kerala Congress will contest this many seats. Some other small party will contest this many seats. So that also happens. So that's a part, that's kind of an alliance. Similarly, at the All India level also, you had the UPA. Now, UPA also consisted of the Congress, the NCP and many small parties. The NDA now consists of the NDA, of the BJP, the JDU. Till a few months ago, it had the Shiv Sena and the Akali Dal also with it, right? So, those are like the alliances which are formed in order to govern either a state or the country itself. Now, before we finish, we need to know about, I mean, the figures, the data which has been given in your NCERT book is very outdated. In fact, according to the NCERT book, UPA is still in power in the country, right? So, you have not 750 parties, but as many as 2,598 parties today in India. 2598 is the latest number of parties registered with the Election Commission of India, right? Of this, you have about 8 national parties, 52 state parties, and the rest are all unrecognized parties, over 2,500 of them. We will talk about them in part 2. You also have, when you talk about the different kinds of political parties, and this is the last point I want to mention out here, you have many what we call journalistic parlance, we refer to them as letterhead parties. ये letterhead parties क्या होते हैं? Letterhead parties are essentially either caste-based parties or a particular small region-based parties. So they kind of they wouldn't have too many members. They may have 100 members, 200 members, 500 members, but they would form a letterhead party. They will register themselves with the Election Commission of India, and come election time, they will go to the main political parties and say, okay, I have the support of 2,000 people or 5,000 people of my caste, of my community, of my region. If you kind of help me, financially hota hai mostly, I will promise you these 5,000 votes. No, in an assembly election or even in a Lok Sabha election, these votes matter a lot. So what they do is that they kind of co-opt this particular, what we call a letterhead kind of a party, which letterhead party means that, you know, they exist only on letterheads. They don't have any major clout outside of the letterhead on the ground as a typical political party is meant to do. So that has also become a bit of a business these days. So that's as far as the first part of the chapter political parties is concerned. In the part 2, we will look at national political parties. We will look at the challenges to political parties and how can parties be reformed, which is a very important part because there are too many problem areas as far as the entire political system is concerned. I hope it's all very clear to you so far. Any problems, write in the comment section. More than happy to address all of that. Thank you very much for watching.